November the 22nd of 1997, a date that would forever echo through the halls of music history, but not for the reasons that anyone had anticipated. It was a day that the music industry bid farewell to an icon, the embodiment of rock and roll, sensuality, passion, and raw talent. Yet above all, it was the day that a daughter lost her father, Michael, before he became the rock god. Born to Patricia Glassop and Keelan Hutchence in 1960, Michael Hutchence was a rock and roll icon through and through. There wasn't much that he couldn't do, from songwriting to acting, and owning an arena full of fans. Michael had the industry wrapped around his finger. Michael Hutchence didn't always aim to become a vocalist. Instead, music was a passion that went unexplored until he turned 8 years old. He was an excellent swimmer before his parents understood his talent for music and poetry went beyond only being a passion on the side. At the age of 7, Michael had his first life-changing accident. While playing in a park, he broke his right arm near the elbow. Minor as it was, it had robbed him from pursuing a life in swimming he had initially hoped for. Fortunately, he was always a man of many talents, and he began pouring his energy into music. In 1968, when he was 8 years old, Michael began his music career, not knowing that he'd become one of the glamorous rock stars he'd grown up admiring. It was in Belrose in Sydney that Michael met Andrew Ferris, the man who would become his lifelong friend and songwriting partner in rock and roll. Michael's father shared that the duo would spend hours playing music and discussing bands in their bedroom, and eventually, Ferris, his brothers, and Michael went from playing in their bedrooms to performing at small clubs as the Ferris Brothers. Music was Michael's bread and butter, even though he only made $150 a week. A few years down the line, and the band debuted their new name, INXS, but their first top 40 Australian hit as INXS came in 1980, and soon, Michael was hailed as the new voice in rock. He was on a roll, simultaneously working on his first single, Speed Kills, pursuing acting, and bagging many awards. By 1984, not only was Michael one of the most coveted music writers, but he was also awarded the most popular male performer title at the Countdown Australia Music Awards. His looks, rock persona, and undeniable sex appeal were already making headlines, and then in 1987, INXS released Kick. This is the album that would place them at the top echelons, shattering all records and cementing their position as the kings of rock. Kick would peak at number 1 in Australia, number 3 on the US Billboard 200, and number 9 in the UK. Kick was a chart topper around the world, but Michael's leather-clad persona in Need You Tonight truly solidified his image as the wild man of rock. From here on out, Michael was an unstoppable force, and everything he did attracted headlines. Michael Hutchence owned the 80s. His bad boy aura was popular amongst the models of the era, making it unsurprising that his dating history would be adorned with some of the top models of the 80s and 90s. Where it all went wrong. Things were looking up, but then Michael's second life-changing accident happened. He was on a pizza run with his longtime girlfriend, Helena Christensen. He refused to move his bicycle out of a taxi driver's way, who then punched him hard enough that he landed face down on the concrete, hitting his head. It seemed like a minor injury at the time, so he didn't seek immediate medical help, not realizing that the mistake would cost him everything. A few days later, he decided to consult a doctor and discovered that he had suffered permanent brain damage. As a result, Michael lost his sense of smell and taste, and his mental health took a massive hit. His fading career as a rock star only added insult to the injury. The slow burn of his brain damage manifested in heightened anger and outbursts towards band members. While Michael navigated through his new life as a struggling actor with his mental health in decline, Paula Yates entered the picture as a ray of sunshine. With her sharp bob cut and a seductive aura, Yates was a wild child, and Michael couldn't help but fall in love. The couple initially crossed paths in 1985 during an interview, and a decade later, fate, it seems, would bring them together once more. But their second interaction on live television looked much different than the first. For their chat in the bed for Channel 4's program, Legs Entwined and Sizzling Chemistry, Yates and Michael looked like a couple straight out of a magazine. Looking at this interview, you couldn't tell Yates was married with 3 daughters, with Hutchence also in a relationship of his own. But this was not only another fling. Michael and Yates were in love, so no one was surprised when Yates left her husband Bob Geldof. Michael also broke up with Helena, and the two explored their budding chemistry. Unsurprisingly, there was a lot of it, and on July the 22nd of 1996, Yates would give birth to the couple's daughter, Tiger Lily. This was a golden time in Michael's life. People close to him say that his daughter was all he would talk about, but it didn't last very long. Tabloids were already feeding off of Michael's angry outbursts and declining career, and his relationship with Paula Yates became a goldmine for journalists who were hungry for a spicy deadline. At that time, Paula was entangled in a messy legal battle with Bob Geldof, her ex-husband, with whom she had had 3 daughters. The nosy media and tabloids had a steady finger on the pulse of the Yates-Geldof custody battle, which got messier by the day. Michael was also drug into the third-page gossip, which didn't help his declining mental health. In 1996, the couple were allegedly found in possession of drugs, but the charges were dropped due to a lack of evidence. Still, though, the case was enough to tarnish Yates' standing in the custody battle. The entire legal ordeal and Michael's failure to find a footing as an actor had brought him back to music. INXS reunited in 1997 to produce Elegantly Wasted, another album that would fail to replicate the success of Kick. Last few days. In late 1997, Michael had come back to Sydney to rehearse with his bandmates for the Elegantly Wasted tour. Amid grappling with his ongoing depression and facing challenging court proceedings, he maintained a hopeful outlook. He looked forward to reuniting with his daughter in Australia during the December leg of the tour, and it helped that he had been seeking help for his depression. But some nights are just tough, and November 22nd happened to be one of them. On November the 22nd of 1997, Michael socialized with his friends in his hotel room at the Ritz-Carlton until about 5 a.m., consuming alcohol and his prescribed Prozac. When his friends left, Michael received an update from Paula Yates indicating that the custody matter had not been finalized. She said that she could not bring the children out for the tour, and this news would break Michael. He didn't handle it very well, considering the substances running through his bloodstream. The person staying in the room directly next to his claimed to have heard him swearing and yelling at someone at around 5 a.m. He made a lot of calls that night. One of them was to Bob Geldof. Out of desperation, Michael had begged Geldof to let the children visit, but to no avail. Geldof claimed that when begging didn't work, Michael had resorted to abuse and threats. At this stage, he had probably drunk enough alcohol to impair his decision-making, a fact evident in his tone when he left a voicemail for his manager. According to her, he sounded slow and deep. After canceling the rehearsal for the tour, he also tried talking to his ex-girlfriend Michelle Bennett, who said that he sounded very upset that morning. Bennett was concerned and immediately came to see him, but she couldn't reach him despite banging on his door multiple times. At 11:50 a.m., Michael would be found dead, leaning on his hotel room's door on his knees. According to reports, Michael had tragically taken his own life by hanging from the ceiling fan. At some point, his belt buckle had broken, leading to the distressing discovery of him kneeling by the hotel door. The news from Paula Yates came at the wrong time, when he was under the heavy influence of alcohol. Considering his mental condition due to the brain damage and then clinical depression, the police concluded that he had ended his own life. In the aftermath, Paula Yates once entertained a theory that his death may have resulted from autoerotic asphyxiation, but it had been turned down by his ex-girlfriends and evidence as well. According to medical specialists, Michael's brain injury significantly increased his vulnerability to self-harm and thoughts of self-harm, and the lack of sleep and heavy amounts of alcohol in his system had only pushed him to take the extreme step. Whether Michael's death could have been avoided or not remains a subject of discussion. Whether Michael's death could have been avoided or not remained a subject of discussion for months and years after. His sister had blamed his ex-girlfriend Helena for not informing the family about the brain injury, which eventually drove him to his tragic death. His partner Paula Yates also kept trying to find answers in wild theories spewed by the tabloids, going into explicit details of their sex life. And while the media continues to lament Paula Yates' perceived negative impact on Michael's life, his tragic death also plunged her into the depths of self-destructive depression. Seeking solace, she returned to drugs and alcohol, ultimately succumbing to an overdose in the year 2000. And what became of Tiger Lily? Bob Geldof assumed custody of Tiger Lily, who was left with next to no inheritance. Michael, the media's golden child, and what Paula Yates would dub God's gift to women, met a heartbreaking ending that starkly contrasted his vibrant and scrutinized life that was always under the media's microscope. His death was lonely, but his funeral would be attended by more than 200 mourners and streamed live on Australian television. The church was packed with attendees to the extent that some had to crouch in corners. Andrew Ferris, Diana Ross, Tom Jones, and many celebrities were in attendance. His ex-girlfriends Helena Christensen, Kylie Minogue, and Kim Wilson were also present. U2 singer Bono had sent a huge heart-shaped wreath with white flowers, while Never Tear Us Apart by INXS played. Just 6 years prior, on July 13th of 1991, their star was shining bright as they took center stage at Wembley Stadium in London. In the spotlight, they shone like never before, with iconic hits such as New Sensation and Never Tear Us Apart, when INXS was at their highest point of their 15-year career.